Imagine waking up in a city where the air tastes like coal. The ground squelches under your boots with something that smells suspiciously like horse dung and sour ale. And the only thing clearer than the stench of rotting food is the echo of coughing children before dawn. This is not a nightmare. This is home. This is London, sometime in the middle of the 19th century, under the heavy breath of Queen Victoria's mighty reign. They say it's the pinnacle of civilization. But for you, it feels like civilization is trying to choke you. The city rises before the sun. The gas lights flicker out one by one, retreating before the first weak gray of morning, revealing streets still cloaked in fog. Not the kind of fog that makes poets wax romantic. No, this fog is different. It has weight. It has a smell. They call it a pia super, thick, yellowish green, pressing against the lungs like wet wool. It's made of coal smoke and mist, soot and sorrow. You've learned it by now, to breathe through your mouth. The moment you open a window, that bitter wind sneaks in, curling under your fingernails, clinging to your throat. It makes people cough constantly, even children. Especially children. Their lungs are the first to go. Outside, the clatter of cart wheels on cobblestone announces another day of doing what you must, not what you dream. Horses snort and stomp through muck, their tails swishing at flies, their droppings steaming in the cold. The city smells like sweat and soot, rotting vegetables, beer gone bad, urine in alleyways, and something else. Faint, metallic, always there. The scent of disease. You get used to it. You have to. Your room is barely more than a box, a single space shared with your family and, sometimes, strangers who pay a penny to sleep on the floor. The ceiling leaks. The floor creaks. The walls weep mold in shades of green and black. There's no chimney. Just a pipe that tries to funnel the smoke from the iron stove, but mostly spits it back at you. In winter, you all sleep in the same bed if there is one. If not, you pile up like firewood on the floor, sharing heat, sharing breath, sharing dreams that mostly involve food. There is no running water. Not here. You fetch it by pail from a pump 3 streets down, hoping it's not the one next to the slaughterhouse. You've learned that water, if it's too clear, might still be full of death. Better to boil it. Better to drink tea. At least tea pretends to be clean. The mornings are chaos. Always. You change clothes under blankets to avoid the cold. You fight your siblings for the wash basin, already brown with yesterday's grime, and take turns spitting toothpaste made from baking soda and leftover soap. If you have soap. If not, you just rinse your mouth with tea and call it done. The chamber pot sits in the corner, ripe and brimming. No one wants to be the one to empty it, but someone must. Otherwise, it overflows, and you've seen what that looks like. The building groans like an old man. Somewhere above, a couple screams at each other. Somewhere below, someone is giving birth, or dying, or both. The city doesn't care. London is too busy growing. Its belly swollen with industry, its hands stained with soot, its eyes blindfolded by ambition. Queen Victoria rules from her palaces with velvet gloves, while you, and everyone like you, dig your fingers into cold bread and colder dirt, trying to feel something like hope. And yet, there's movement. Always move. On your way out the door, you pass the neighbor's son, dragging a sack of rags, his fingers already raw from chimney soot. You nod. He doesn't. His face is gray with the same fog that creeps under the doors at night. There's no time for greetings when survival is louder than manners. Out on the street, your shoes, if you have them, sink into the mud. Not just rainwater. This mud is part manure, part ashes, part leftovers from last night's fish market. Every puddle reflects not the sky, but a pasty smear of gaslight and grime. Children dart through the mess barefoot, their feet blackened, their toes curled against the cold. One slips, lands hard, then laughs. That's London too. Pain, then laughter, hunger, then a song. Always both. Never one without the other. You walk past a butcher's stall. Flies swarm around the meat, which is more bone than flesh. A woman shouts prices while slapping a cat off the table. She has 3 teeth and a tattoo of an anchor on her forearm. You admire her. You fear her. She's survived things you can't imagine yet. The market is chaos, calls of halfpenny apples, and fresh off the barge, mixed with the clinking of coins and the slap of wet fish on wooden boards. Pickpockets are already at work, slipping between crowds like fish through nets. You keep your hand on your pocket, where your 1 coin sits. If you lose it, you don't eat. If you don't eat, you get sick. If you get sick, well, you don't get better. A man coughs behind you and your shoulders stiffen. Everyone in this city coughs, but this one sounds wet, the kind that echoes in rib cages. Tuberculosis, consumption they call it. You walk faster. You know how it ends. You've seen it in your aunt, your cousin, your schoolmate. Eyes sunken, lips pale, blood on the handkerchief. No medicine, no hope, just time. Still, you keep moving, because movement is life. You pass under a bridge where shadows linger and whispers chase each other. That's where the boys with no homes sleep, or try to. Rats chew at their sleeves. Policemen chase them away. Some never wake up. They freeze, or starve, or disappear. Sometimes you wonder why no one stops it. Why no one screams, but people do scream, all the time. You just stop hearing it after a while. It blends in with the clatter of hooves, the hiss of steam, the shouts of dock workers and the groan of trams. In London, screaming is just part of the music. But here's the thing, the strange, almost cruel thing. Even in all this madness, there's beauty, not the shiny kind. Not the kind they write poems about, but beauty nonetheless. The glow of a bakery fire seen through a frost-covered window. The warm crust of stolen bread passed between friends. The laughter of a girl who still finds joy in a stringless violin. A mother's hand on your forehead when you're burning up, whispering old nursery rhymes to scare away the fever. Moments that don't make it into history books, but stitch together the soul of the city. Because this city does have a soul. Broken, beaten, but alive. And it will hold you, even as it hurts you. It will teach you to fight with silence, to dream with empty stomachs, and to dance when there's nothing left to celebrate. It will wrap you in fog and spit, and if you're lucky, or unlucky enough, it might let you live long enough to see what lies beyond the soot. You're only a child, but already you understand one thing. Surviving here is an art, a twisted, messy, heroic art. No one will give you medals. No one will remember your name. But if you make it through another day, that's victory enough. And so, with the sky a dull pewter, and your hands already numb, you take your first step into the alley that leads to the docks. Another day, another chance. London doesn't care about your story, but we do. You return home at dusk, your legs aching, your shoes soaked from a day spent trudging through London's unforgiving streets. You climb the narrow staircase of a tenement that sways ever so slightly with the wind, its wooden bones groaning as if protesting your presence. The steps are slick with moisture and coal dust, and you grip the rail not because you're tired, though you are, but because once, last winter, a neighbor's boy slipped and fell all the way down. He was never quite right after that. No one expects these stairs to be safe. You don't even expect them to be dry. At the top, the door to your room creaks open. There's no key. Just a piece of string threaded through a hole in the wood that you pulled to unlatch it. Inside, a burst of warm, fetid air rushes to greet you. It's the familiar scent of damp clothes, sweat, old bread, and the faint musk of mice nesting in the rafters. You've learned to stop smelling it. It's just home. The room is small, too small for the 7 bodies that sleep here. The ceiling is low. slanted in a way that makes standing upright a privilege reserved for children, and those under 5 feet tall. There are no windows, just one cracked wallboard with a knothole the size of a thumb that lets in a sliver of gray, smoky daylight, and sometimes a bit of rain. The plaster peels in long, curling strips like dead skin, and the mold patterns on the wall have started to resemble constellations, your own sickly version of the night sky. There is a bed of sorts, a sagging frame of warped wood held together with rope, covered by a pile of flattened hay, a threadbare blanket, and whatever rags can be spared. The children sleep top to tail, each trying to keep their feet away from someone else's face. You're the second eldest, which means you sleep on the edge. If you fall, you land on the cold, uneven floor. But at least you're close to the stove when it's lit. That's something. The stove itself is tiny and rusted, with one functioning burner and a door that won't stay shut. Your mother has rigged a system using a bent fork to keep it closed. It smokes constantly, and sometimes it spits sparks onto the wooden floor, which is why there's a scorched patch right next to where your baby brother sleeps. You all pretend not to worry about it. There are so many things to worry about. If you let one in, the rest come flooding behind. A single wooden table stands in the corner, its legs uneven. It wobbles under the weight of a chipped basin, a tin mug, and a crust of bread no one has dared to finish. Next to it, 3 stools of mismatched height and color, one made from a fruit crate, and another that's really just a box with a cushion tied to it. You argue over the proper seats. Even in misery, hierarchy matters. The chamber pot sits by the door, its contents thickening in the chill. No one wants to deal with it. Sometimes, when the stink becomes unbearable, your mother opens the door just long enough to toss its contents down the stairwell. She always yells a warning, but once, a tenant below caught the brunt of a poorly timed toss. He screamed curses up the stairwell for hours, but no one listened. He's done the same himself, probably more than once. The walls are thin, so thin you can hear the man in the next room humming an off-key lullaby as he bathes his son in a tin pail. You can hear the woman downstairs trying to soothe her colicky infant with the rhythm of a rocking chair that creaks like a ghost on a swing. And you can hear the couple across the hall fight for the 3rd time that day. You know their pattern. The slam of a door, a crash, silence, then sobs. But amid all this noise, your own family lives as best they can. Your mother, her back bent from years of scrubbing floors, works silently in the corner, soaking tomorrow's laundry in grey water fetched hours ago. Her hands are red and cracked, her fingernails broken, but she hums a lullaby from her own childhood, a tune older than the city itself. Her voice is thin but sweet, cutting through the thick air like a single beam of light. Your father, if he's home, is quiet. He sits by the stove, staring into the embers with a face that's more shadow than skin. His breath rattles that deep, rumbling cough that started last winter and hasn't stopped since. He doesn't talk much anymore, just grunts and nods. But when he does speak, it's to you, to tell you where he left the bread, to remind you not to let the mice chew your shoes, to whisper things that don't make sense until weeks later, like how coal dust always finds a way in. No matter how tight the door is shut, the children don't mind the space. They play in it. They build castles out of folded laundry and forts from firewood. Your baby sister has a doll made from a sock stuffed with straw. She's named it Queenie. Queenie is always getting married, or sick, or sent to work in a factory. It's a dark game, but it makes her laugh, and that's enough. At night, the chaos settles into a slow rhythm. The stove hisses. Someone snores. The city murmurs outside, a low growl of distant hooves, the shriek of train whistles, the occasional drunkard singing himself into the gutter. You curl up next to your brother, your knees drawn to your chest, and try not to think about how cold your feet are. The blanket doesn't reach everyone. It never does. Sometimes, when the world is quiet, you listen for the mice in the rafters. You've named one of them William. He's bold and fat and runs across the shelf like he owns it. You don't hate him. He's just trying to survive. Just like you. Just like everyone here. The room may be filthy. It may be cramped. It may be the kind of place that makes your stomach turn if you look at it too closely. But it's yours. It's your mother's humming. Your father's cough. Your sister's giggle. It's the smell of bread. The creak of the floorboard. The whisper of wind through the hole in the wall. And in this darkness, this cold, moldy box of a room, there's something else. Something you can't quite name. Not love, maybe, but something close. Something warm. Something that makes you close your eyes and hope that, if you're lucky, tomorrow you'll wake up to find that William the Mouse has left you a crumb, that the rain hasn't soaked the floor, that your mother will sing again. In this room with no window, no privacy, no comfort, only family, you fall asleep not with fear, but with a strange, fragile kind of peace. Because this, for all its filth and noise and ache, is home. And home, no matter how broken, is where you begin. Morning returns with the same dull grayness it always brings, barely distinguishable from the night. You wake to the sound of coughing. Yours. Your brother's. Someone downstairs hacking so violently it sounds like their lungs might splatter against the wall. It's not an alarm clock. But it might well be. In this city, the day doesn't wait for you to feel rested. You slip from the warmth of shared bodies, careful not to wake the baby, and crawl toward the corner where your boots sit stiff and damp. They never fully dry. You jam your feet into them anyway. You dress fast, under your blanket, if you're lucky. The room breathes cold, even with the stove sputtering its final embers from the night before. The shirt you pull over your head still smells of ash and coal soap. Your fingers are too numb to tie the fraying laces properly, so you tuck them in. Your sister shivers in her sleep beside you, a trail of snot crusted under her nose. You give her the last corner of the blanket and rise. The door creaks open with that familiar groan, the stairwell already alive with noise. Feet shuffling. Mother shouting. Someone dragging a crate down each step with a crash. You hold your breath, not just from the smell, but the anticipation. The outside world waits like a beast at the bottom of the stairs, ready to swallow you whole. You descend into it with your head low and your stomach hollow. Outside, London greets you with a slap. The air is thicker than soup, its weight pressing on your chest the moment you step into it. The fog, yellow and sour, curls through the alley like it's alive. Your throat itches. Your eyes water. It's not even the worst of it yet. Some days you can't see your own hands. Today, you're lucky you can make out the cobblestones. The street is some activity already. Carts groan under the weight of barrels and bricks. Horses snort clouds into the air, tails twitching as they trudge through mud streaked with manure. The cobblestones are slick, every step a gamble. You remember when your friend Mary slipped on a patch of frozen dung and cracked her chin open? She bled through her scarf for hours before her mother found her. You edge along the buildings, where the ground is slightly drier and the crowds thinner. But even here, the risk is high. You nearly step on a dead rat, its body flattened like a forgotten coin. A dog snatches it before you can react, its ribs showing through its filthy fur. It growls at you, daring you to take it. You move on. Everywhere, voices rise. Sellers shouting prices, women scolding children, boys running errands with arms full of packages and mouths full of lies. The smell changes with every step. Overripe vegetables, urine in alleyways, fish that's been dead too long. It blends into a kind of nose blindness. You only notice it when it gets worse. And it does. You pass the tannery, where animal skins hang like flayed ghosts, dripping and stinking. The workers inside shout over the thump of hammers and the hiss of steam. One man waves at you with a hand missing 2 fingers. He laughs. You don't know why? Maybe because he's alive. You cut through the market square, already heaving with bodies. There's no space to walk without brushing shoulders, catching elbows, bumping baskets. A woman with a baby on her back haggles for a bruised cabbage. A toothless vendor tosses a fish into a customer's apron, slapping her thigh with its limp tail. She doesn't flinch. Nothing surprises anyone here. The children are out in full force. Some are working. Some are watching. Some are stealing. You see Thomas, 10 years old and quicker than any shadow, slip a hand into a man's coat, then vanish before the man even feels lighter. You catch his eye across the crowd. He winks. You nod. You won't tell. You might need him to teach you one day. A cart overturns somewhere ahead, a wheel snapping like a gunshot. Oranges spill into the gutter. 2 boys dive for them, but they're not fast enough. A cane cracks across one's back. He yelps and scrambles away with only a rind. You don't move. You've learned that, unless it's your blood on the street, you don't interfere. You keep moving, weaving through the chaos, stepping over puddles that aren't entirely water. The rain hasn't fallen in days, but the gutters run with a mix of sludge, dishwater, and God knows what else. The Thames is nearby. You can smell it before you see it. Rotting algae, brine, human waste. It all flows into the same place. And sometimes it flows back. You've seen fish float belly up near the shore, their eyes cloudy, their mouths still open, as if mid-scream. And yet, for all its filth, London doesn't stop. It heaves forward like a great choking machine. The factories hum. The trains scream. The bells of distant churches ring through the smog like echoes in a nightmare. You pass a newsboy shouting the day's headlines. Another ship sunk, another plague spreading, another rich man celebrating his fortune. You wonder if he even understands what he's yelling. You wonder if anyone does. You pause at a baker's shop, its windows fogged with warmth you can touch. Inside, loaves sit golden and fat on wooden shelves. The smell is pure cruelty. You press your forehead to the glass just long enough for the shopkeeper to scowl and shoo you away with a cloth. You back off. You always do. There's a scream down the street. A real one. Someone's stolen something. Or someone's been stabbed. Or maybe it's just a domestic squabble gone too far. You don't investigate. You don't need to. You already know how it ends. It ends with blood or silence or both. And tomorrow, it will happen again. But not everything is grim. Sometimes, a stranger shares a piece of coal. Sometimes a girl hands you the heel of her loaf before running off. Sometimes, the fog lifts just enough for the sun to smear across a rooftop, and you remember that light still exists. That color hasn't abandoned the world entirely. You stop at the foot of a bridge and watch the city pulse beneath you. The rooftops disappear into mist. The chimneys belch smoke like monsters. The people, ants, shadows, ghosts, move with purpose, even if they've forgotten what it is. You feel something in your chest then. Not quite hope. But maybe it's cousin. Maybe something smaller, quieter, like breath. You turn back toward home, not because you're done, but because there's nothing left to find today. You've survived another morning. You've dodged carts, filth, fists, and fate. And that, in London, is a victory all its own. By midday, your stomach has begun to speak a language of its own. Not a gentle grumble, not the polite whisper of skipped breakfast. This is a deep, hollow growl, the sound of something ancient stirring. Hunger in London doesn't announce itself with grace. It claws, it twists, it makes your legs weaker with every step. You know it too well. You've lived with it for years, and it's a quiet tenant in your ribs, a shadow that follows your every errand. And it never pays rent. Breakfast, if you can call it that, was a crust of bread that tasted like it remembered being fresh once. No butter, no jam, not even drippings. Just hard, dry crust soaked in a few drops of yesterday's tea to soften it enough to chew. That's if you were lucky. Some mornings there's nothing but air. and you pretend to chew just to fool your body into silence. You drink tea to stay warm, to trick your gut into thinking something is being digested. Not the fine tea of fancy parlors. This is boiled water with a used tea leaf or two, recycled until it loses color. You know it's safe because it's been boiled. Everything else, water, milk, soup, could be death. There's a market stall down on Narrow Street where potatoes are sold with the dirt still clinging to them. That's the cheapest kind. Your mother once said dirt adds weight, which means you're paying for something that doesn't feed you. But beggars, real beggars, not the polite kind, can't afford to be choosy. You remember the last time she handed a coin to the vendor, and he tossed in an extra spud for free. He said it was because your sister smiled at him. She was missing 2 teeth and covered in soot. He must have had a soft spot for hard cases. Lunch, if there is one, might be a bowl of something gray and wet. Soup made from boiled bones, cabbage ends, and whatever can be coaxed from the butcher's bin. Some families use rat. Others deny it, even while chewing. You've seen children eat things dropped in the street, dust them off, and call it treasure. You once did it yourself. A piece of toffee, half melted and stepped on. Still sweet enough to count as a blessing. The smell of food in London is a cruel joke. It drifts from the upper windows of bakeries, from behind locked doors, from carts guarded by policemen hired to protect pies from people like you. Sausage rolls, fresh buns, roasted chestnuts. You smell them long before you ever see them. You breathe them in like they could fill you, but they don't. They never do. Street vendors call to you, their voices rehearsed, their eyes scanning for coins you don't have. A woman with a grease-streaked apron offers fried eel, the skin curling in the oil, the smell both inviting and repellent. You watch a man devour one in 3 bites. He licks his fingers and walks away like he didn't just spend his whole wage on that one mouthful. You wonder if it was worth it. Then you wonder if you'd do the same. Sometimes food comes from charity. Not out of kindness, not really. From church basements and soup kitchens you queue with dozens of others, waiting your turn for a ladle of something hot. It's watery, always. Mostly oats, sometimes beans, rarely meat. Never enough. You get 1 bowl, no seconds. If you're too late, you get nothing. If you're too early, you wait in the rain. Either way, you walk away hungrier than you started. There's a bakery a few blocks from the docks. You've never been inside, but the smells that drift through the broken shutters in the late afternoon, yeast, flour, sugar when it's a good day, linger in your mind long after the warmth of the oven has faded from the street. Once, you found a crust in the alley behind it, slightly moldy, still edible. You split it with your brother, pretending it was cake. Milk is a luxury. When you get it, it's usually watered down. Sometimes it can sour, and your mother says to drink it anyway. She says it's good for your bones. You're not sure if she's lying or if she's just praying. You've heard rumors of milkmen adding chalk plaster, even formaldehyde, to keep it white and stretch it further. But you drink it. Of course you do. There's a man near Whitechapel who sells meat pies. No one asks what kind of meat. You don't want to know. They're hot, cheap, and heavy in the stomach. That's what matters. Once, you bit into one and found something hard. You spat it out. A tooth, not yours. You threw the rest away, then spent the evening crying from the hunger you'd reawakened. Dinner is a family affair. Not in the sense of celebration, but survival. You all sit on the floor or whatever crates and stools are available. The pot is placed in the center. Your mother dishes out portions with the care of a surgeon. Everyone watches. No one speaks. The youngest eat first. The sickest next. You're somewhere in the middle, old enough not to complain, young enough to still be noticed. If someone finishes early, they scrape their bowl with a finger, then lick it. Plates are wiped clean, not with rags, but with bits of bread, if any remains. Nothing is wasted. Not a drop. The hunger doesn't go away after eating. It just changes shape. It becomes a whisper in your bones. A lull in your thoughts. Something you carry with you into sleep. You dream of food more than anything else. Roasted chicken. Buttered rolls. Apples you don't have to fight a wasp for. Meals where you're allowed to stop eating because you're full, not because the food is gone. Sometimes you wonder what it's like to be full, properly full. The kind of full where you loosen your belt and sigh. Where you leave crumbs on the plate. Where you say, I couldn't eat another bite and mean it. You've seen it in others. The fat shopkeepers, the clergy, the factory managers. Their fullness shows in their cheeks, their rings. The way they walk like the world is soft beneath their feet. But you carry your hunger like a second skin. It sharpens you. It teaches you what matters. It tells you that every bite counts. That bread is gold. That sharing a potato is an act of love. That even the smell of stew can give you hope, if you let it. And in the rare, miraculous moment when someone offers you something, an extra crust, a leftover roll, a spoonful of something hot, you take it with both hands, thank them with your eyes, and promise yourself you'll remember the taste. Because in London, in the underbelly of progress and pride, hunger never sleeps. It only waits. And the only way to beat it, even for a little while, is to keep moving, keep eating, keep hoping. Tomorrow might bring a better meal. Or it might not. But either way, you'll be here. Stomach growling, eyes scanning, heart pounding, still hungry, still alive. The day doesn't wait for you to recover. If your hands are sore, your back aching, if your stomach still knots with hunger from the day before, it doesn't matter. Morning arrives, and with it, the work. Work in London doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't knock politely. It drags you by the collar into its jaws, chews you up, and spits out what's left for the next round. You are a cog in a machine, and no one mourns a broken cog. They just replace it. Your father rises before the sun. The room is barely warm from the stove, his boots hard and stiff with dried mud and blood from the docks. He doesn't complain. He hasn't complained in years. He lifts the same sack of tools, wraps the same scarf around his neck, kisses your mother on the forehead with the same silence. The cough follows him down the stairs, a low, growling thing that echoes long after the door shuts. You've heard him call it the black kiss. The price paid by every man who breathes coal dust and river damp for too long. You remember following him once just to see. The docks were a different world, a kingdom of noise and risk. Men yelling, ships unloading crates bigger than carriages, hooks flying through the air, ropes snapping like whips. Your father moved like a ghost between it all, invisible and silent. He carried sacks heavier than you, worked without gloves, swallowed soot with every breath. At the end of the day, he got 3 pennies and a bruise across his ribs. He called it a good day. He bought bread. Your mother's work never ends. When she's not washing laundry for the butcher's family, she's mending clothes for a seamstress who pays in scraps. When she's not scrubbing floors, she's watching the neighbor's children. Her hands are always wet, red, raw. Her eyes are always searching, measuring what's left, what needs fixing, what can be spared. She finds strength in silence. You once asked if she ever rests. She smiled, leaned close, and said, "We rest when we're dead, love. Until then, keep moving." You started working young. Everyone does. 5, maybe 6. No one keeps count. Your first job was sweeping chimneys. They said you were the perfect size, small enough to climb inside the flues, thin enough to squeeze through the tightest bends. The soot burned your throat. Your hands bled. Your knees bruised. You emerged, coughing, black and trembling. The master gave you a coin and a pat on the head. You threw up behind the alley and went back the next day. Since then, you've done everything. Sold matches on street corners, your fingers stiff with cold, your voice hoarse from calling out. Hauled rags to the recycling yard where men laughed and called you mouse. Picked nails from ash piles, sorted bones, whatever paid. Whatever kept the pot boiling for one more night. The factories are worse. You've seen the inside of one. A dye maker's shop with a floor slick with oil and sorrow. The machines scream, metal jaws biting down faster than the eye can track. You knew a boy named Reggie who lost 3 fingers before he turned 10. They sent him home with a bandage and a pat on the head, told him he could still sweep floors. You asked what happened to the fingers. He said they swept them up too. The girls don't have it easier. The girls don't have it easier. Your sister works in a matchstick factory. She comes home with her skin glowing pale green, her breath foul, her teeth loose. They call it phossy jaw. The chemicals eat from the inside out. She says she's fine. She says the other girls have it worse. One of them collapsed last week. No one came to help. They just stepped over her until the foreman dragged her out. And then there are the children even younger than you, barefoot, shirtless, crawling through gutters to collect coal bits and metal scraps. They don't speak much, just look at you with hollow eyes, too tired for tears. Some die in the street, some disappear. No one looks for them, no one reports them. In London, if you're poor, your name lasts as long as someone remembers to say it. The worst, maybe, is the workhouse. If your father is hurt, if your mother can't work, if you're too sick or too small to earn, there's only one place left. The workhouse. A prison dressed in charity. They feed you, yes, but barely. Gruel so thin it tastes like boiled regret. Bread so stale you need to soak it just to chew. They cut your hair, strip your clothes, put you in a uniform that smells like old soap and despair. They separate families, men to one side, women to another, children in between. You cry at night. Everyone does. Then the bell rings, and you rise to clean, to scrub, to sew, to die slowly under someone else's schedule. There are no sick days, no holidays, no excuses. If you stop working, you fall behind. If you fall behind, you starve. If you starve, you disappear. It's that simple. You've learned to smile when you're tired, to lie when you're hurt, to keep your mouth shut and your hands moving. You've learned that fingers grow calluses, that blood dries, that pain can be tucked away like a secret. You've learned that surviving is a skill, and work is its cruel teacher. And yet, even in this grind, this endless churn of labor and loss, there are moments. You remember one. A day in early spring. The sun broke through the smog just long enough to turn the soot on your hands into silk. A woman passed by and handed you an apple. A real apple. Red, crisp, sweet. You split it with your brother and didn't speak the whole time. Just chewed, eyes closed, pretending the world was different. Those moments keep you going. Not hope, exactly. Not dreams. Just memories. The feel of warm bread in your palm. The sound of your father's laugh, rare and rumbling. The way your mother hums when she scrubs the floor. Like music could sweep away the grime. Work never ends in London. The city eats labor like fire eats coal. But as long as your hands move, as long as your legs carry you forward, as long as your name still echoes in someone's voice, you are not beaten. Not yet. You lay your head down that night, bones aching, stomach empty, fingers blistered, and you whisper a promise to yourself. Tomorrow, you'll rise again. Tomorrow, you'll work again. Tomorrow, you'll survive. You don't wake up one day and decide to become a criminal. There's no ceremony, no initiation, no moment where the skies darken and a villain is born. It happens slowly, quietly. You cross a line, and then another, until one day you look back and realize the line is gone. And the truth is, in the depths of London, crime is not rebellion. It's survival with sharper edges. The first time you steal, your hands shake so badly you can barely grip what you're taking. A loaf of bread from a pushcart, left unattended while the vendor shouted at a constable. "You'd plan it!" Your stomach growls, your legs move, and suddenly it's in your coat. You walk away fast, not running. Running is guilt. You keep your eyes low and your pace steady. You don't breathe until you're 5 streets away and hidden behind the coal yard. Then you devour it, crust and all, your heart racing faster than you're chewing. It tastes like heaven and shame. The second time is easier. A handful of apples dropped in the mud during a scuffle in the market. You scoop them up before the vendor can count his losses. This time, you share them. Your sister grins with apple juice dripping down her chin. Your brother eats with both hands like the fruit might vanish. You don't feel guilty, you feel useful, powerful. And that's the moment the city finds its hook in you. Because once you realize how easy it is, how distracted people get, how little they expect from someone who looks hungry and small, the temptation grows. You learn to watch for opportunity. You watch faces, not goods. You learn who looks over their shoulder and who doesn't. You learn which stalls have loose seams in their tarps, where a quick hand can reach in unnoticed. You learn the rhythm of distraction, a baby crying, a car tipping, a horse slipping on cobbles, moments that create openings, little cracks in the world where you can slip through and take something that isn't yours but feels like it should be. Your friends are already deep into it. Thomas, who taught you how to palm coins. Lila, who hides needles in her hair and thread in her boots. Even the twins, barely 7, who lift handkerchiefs and buttons and sell them back to tailors like they're brand new. You don't talk about it. You just understand. There's unspoken code. You don't snitch. You don't get greedy. You don't steal from the poor. And if you're caught, you run. Fast and far and without apology. The older boys form gangs. Not like in stories, with names and rituals and loyalty. These are the loose groups, bound by need and fear. Some control alleys. Others run messages for men with mustaches and knives who operate out of pubs. There are codes. Hand signals, lookout posts. The police, called coppers or peelers, are known quantities. Some ignore you if they get a coin. Others chase for sport. A few are cruel, not just for the law, but for the pleasure of putting boot to rib. You get chased once, just once. A man caught you slipping a tin of tobacco into your shirt. You ran, your boots slapping the wet stone, your lungs screaming. He caught your coat, but not you. You twisted, fell, rolled. He got the tobacco back. You kept your pride, and the bruises faded. But not everyone gets away. Your brother didn't. He tried to snatch a meat pie from a baker's shelf. They caught him, held him by the collar, and beat him bloody in front of a cheering crowd. A lesson, they said. A warning. But to you, it looked like a game. Like entertainment. Like blood and spit were currency, and everyone paid to watch. He couldn't walk for days. Couldn't smile for longer. Some go further. Pickpocketing is a gateway. Burglary comes next. Then there's the worst. Those who steal not just goods, but bodies. Resurrection men, they're called. They dig up the dead to sell to doctors for study. You hear whispers about graveyards with loose dirt, coffins missing their tenants, bones exchanged like coin. It's not common, not in any more. But in the alleys, among the desperate, every rumor has a kernel of truth. And there's always danger. One wrong move, one overreach, and the consequences are swift. Stocks in the public square. A whipping in front of jeering children. Prison, cold, dark, and full of older men who know things they shouldn't. Or worse, transportation. A one-way trip to a colony across the sea, shackled and silent, never to return. Still, people take the risk. Because the alternative is starvation. Because when the system gives you no place at the table, sometimes the only option left is to flip the table and grab what you can before the guards arrive. Because sometimes the thrill of getting away with it feels like the only control you'll ever have. You don't think of yourself as a thief. Not really. You think of yourself as a survivor, a scavenger in a city that feeds the rich and punishes the hungry. You're not proud. But you're not sorry either. You tell yourself you'll stop one day, when things are better, when they're older, when there's another way. But deep down, you know better. You know that in London, crime isn't a choice. It's a chapter in your education, a lesson in shadows and speed, a skill as essential as tying your boots or boiling water. And tonight, as you sit in the corner of your room, counting the coins you didn't earn with sweat but with nerve, you feel something stir inside you. Not guilt, not fear, but resolve. Because tomorrow, there will still be hunger. There will still be cold. And if the law says survival is a crime, then so be it. You'll take your chances in the fog. You wake one morning to the sound of coughing. Deeper, wetter than usual. At first, you think it's your father again. But then you realize it's coming from your sister. She lies curled beneath the blanket, pale and still, with a sheen of sweat that makes her hair cling to her forehead. Her breath rattles like a loose shutter in a storm. You lean close, whisper her name, but her eyes don't open. That's when the panic sets in. Illness is no stranger here. It walks your alleyways like a neighbor, sits at your dinner table like an uninvited guest. You've seen what it does. One day someone's fine. Thin, tired, sure, but still walking. And the next, they're coughing blood into a rag or curled up in the corner, shaking from fever, whispering nonsense to the wall. You've seen bodies carried down your stairwell on makeshift stretchers, wrapped in old curtains, followed by mothers with empty hands. And every time the question hangs in the air. Who's next? Your sister's illness spreads fast. Within a day, she can't sit up. Her cough echoes through the walls at night, answered by others from neighboring rooms. Your mother soaks rags in vinegar and places them on her chest. Your father boils water and whispers to God, though he's long since stopped going to church. Everyone does what they can, but there's no doctor. Not here. Not unless you have coin. And you don't. You run to the chemist shop 3 blocks away, with your last penny clutched tight. The man behind the counter looks like he hasn't smiled in years. He listens to your description, barely blinking, then turns and returns with a brown bottle. Laudanum, you know the name. Opium and wine, he says, a few drops to ease her pain. You ask if it will cure her. He doesn't answer, just takes the penny and moves to the next customer. Back home, you watch your mother tilt the bottle carefully. The liquid is dark, syrupy, smells like rot and spice. She places a few drops on a spoon, holds it to your sister's lips. She swallows, barely. Her body relaxes. The coughing slows. For a moment, the room breathes easier. But it's only a moment. The next day, she can't speak. Her lips move, but no sound comes. She stares at the ceiling with wide, frightened eyes, and your mother breaks. She sits beside the bed and sobs, not loud but deep, like something inside her cracked open. You've never seen her cry like that. Not when your brother was arrested. Not when the rent man came. Not even when she burned her hands trying to keep the stove lit. But now, with her daughter slipping away and nothing left to do, she weeps. You feel useless, angry. You want to scream at the walls, at the city, at the world that lets children die because their parents can't afford help. You think about the rich, those whose children sleep in warm beds, whose fevers are met with real doctors and fresh linens. And the thought burns like coal in your chest. Disease doesn't care about fairness. It spreads where it wants, and in London, it wants everywhere. The water you drink is drawn from the Thames, the same river where waste, blood, and bodies float. The air is thick with coal smoke, damp and heavy. You breathe in filth with every breath, and it settles in your lungs like a curse. Tuberculosis is the worst. They call it consumption, because it eats you from the inside out. It takes your strength, your voice, your color. You fade, slow. Your sister is fading. You see it in the way her fingers lie limp, and how her bones press against her skin like they're trying to escape. You want to believe she'll recover. But you've seen enough to know the truth. Your neighbors whisper about cholera, too. It comes with diarrhea, fever, death within hours. You remember a boy who lived 2 doors down. He drank from the wrong pump and was gone by morning. The smell stayed longer than he did. No one talks about him now. Hospitals are no better. You went once with your father. He had a gash on his arm, deep and dirty from a nail at the dock. They stitched him up without washing the wound, without cleaning the needle. He screamed. You held his other hand and tried not to cry. The wound turned black. For days he couldn't move. Your mother made poultices from bread and lard. Somehow he healed, but you never went back. The hospital halls were filled with moaning, children crying, men praying. The beds were packed, some patients lying on the floor. The smell was unforgettable. Piss, sweat, and something else. Infection. You could taste it in the air. Doctors do what they can, but they are few, and their knowledge is thin. Some still believe in bleeding, a practice that terrifies you. You've heard stories of leeches, of knives, of patients too weak to fight. Surgery is done without anesthesia. You're told the screams can be heard down the block. If the pain doesn't kill you, the infection might, so most don't go. They treat at home, with herbs from a neighbor. With hope and desperation. You've seen mothers crush flowers into poultices. Fathers boil onions for fevers. It's not enough, but it's all they have. And when death comes, and it often does, it comes quietly. No grand farewell, no ceremony. Just a stillness. A silence in the room, followed by your mother folding a sheet. Your father lifting the small body. There's no money for a coffin. A burial shroud, maybe. A short walk to the cemetery, where earth waits, indifferent. You hold your sister's hand every night now, her fingers cool in yours. You whisper stories to her, old rhymes and nonsense tales. You want her to laugh, to breathe, to blink. Anything. But she just lies there, still and hollow. And you pray, not to God, to her. You tell her not to go. You beg. Because in London, life is fragile. A cough, a glass of water, a shared blanket. That's all it takes. Sickness is a shadow that follows every footstep. It hides in the food, the air, the touch of a stranger's hand. And when it finds you, you are alone. You've learned to live with rats, with hunger, with work that breaks bones. But this, watching someone you love fade, knowing you can't stop it, this is worse. This is the true cruelty of poverty. Not the filth, not the cold, but the helplessness. And yet you sit by her side night after night, because even if you can't heal her, you can hold her hand. You can let her know she's not forgotten, not alone. Even in the darkest corners of this city, love remains. Quiet, fragile, unseen, but present. Water in your part of London isn't clear. It isn't cool or crisp or clean. It comes cloudy, warm when it shouldn't be, and smells faintly of rot. Like cabbage left too long in the sun or the breath of something that died last week. The closest pump is 6 buildings down, and if you're lucky, it works. If you're not, it wheezes out a trickle of mud and disappointment. Either way, you drink what it gives. Because it's that or thirst. And sometimes, even thirst feels safer. You've seen things in that water. Hair. Bits of string. A black thing you didn't look at long enough to name. Once your brother found a fish in his cup, a fingerling still twitching, flipping over in the tin like it wanted to escape the same fate. He laughed. Your mother didn't. She boiled the water twice that day, just in case. The Thames is your city's lifeline and its curse. Every waste from every home, factory and stable, drains into it, unapologetically, unfiltered. The river moves sluggishly, like it's too tired to protest. In summer, it reeks so badly that your nose burns if you walk too close. People joke about the stench, but no one laughs. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your dreams. They call it the Great Stink, and some say it's strong enough to kill. You believe it. Bathing is a luxury, not a habit. You don't bathe to feel refreshed. You bathe when your skin starts to crawl, or when someone comments on the smell. Your family uses a tin hot tub barely large enough to sit in, and the water is always cold. Always shared. One bucket. Heated if the coal allows. Your father goes first. Then your mother. Then the children in descending age. By the time it's your turn, the water is more soup than bath. Gray, oily, and speckled with bits you try not to identify. You dip fast. Scrub fast. Out fast. Soap is hard to come by. When you do have it, it smells harsh and stings your cuts. You use it sparingly, knowing it'll run out soon. Most of the time you just rinse, or wipe with a cloth, or shake your hair and call it clean enough. The dirt never really goes away. It just becomes a second skin. Toilets don't exist, not the way they do in the rich neighborhoods. In your building, there's a chamber pot, maybe two, for all 7 people. When it fills, someone empties it into the shared outhouse at the end of the alley. An outhouse that stinks so badly you hold your breath as you approach. Go fast and run back. Sometimes the pot overflows. Sometimes it freezes solid. Sometimes it's kicked over by accident in the middle of the night. And then nobody sleeps. You've learned to walk carefully in alleys, to avoid the puddles, even if they look like rain. You know the difference between clean and contaminated just by the color. You've seen babies sit in the street and splash in water that came from God knows where. You've seen dogs lap it up and vomit it out 2 blocks later. Your mother boils everything. Water for tea, water for washing, even the water for dough. She says it makes it safe, but you've watched neighbors fall sick anyway. Cholera doesn't care about boiling. It slips in quietly and steals your strength before you even know you're at war. The fever comes, the vomiting, the cold sweat. Sometimes you recover. Often you don't. The city tried to fix it once, or so the rumors say. They built new sewers, dug tunnels deep underground, hired a man with a name no one could pronounce, who said the smell was poison, and the solution was science. They say he convinced Parliament to build drains big enough to walk through, but not in your neighborhood. Not yet. You're still waiting. Still drinking from pumps that cough and sputter. In the richer parts of town, they have taps inside their homes, baths, toilets with seats. You heard once of a house with hot water on command. You thought it was a lie. Then you saw it for yourself, from the back door of a kitchen you weren't meant to enter. The spout gleamed like a silver miracle. You wanted to touch it. You didn't. Cleanliness isn't just comfort. It's a shield. Against sickness. Against shame. Dirty children are overlooked. Ignored. Blamed. If your face is clean, your shirt tucked, people see you. If not, you disappear into the city's background, like mold on a wall. Your mother does her best, combing your hair, pinning your shirt. She wipes your face with the edge of her apron before you leave for errands. She says, look proper, even if you're not. Sometimes you dream of baths, real ones, deep ones, with bubbles and warmth and time. Not rushed, not shared, not freezing. A place where the dirt melts away and you feel new. Not just scrubbed, but restored. In those dreams, the water is clear. Sweet. Safe enough to drink. And you do, cupping it in your hands, pouring it over your head like grace. But then you wake, back in your bed, the bucket in the corner already full. The basin on the table lined with soot. Your sister coughing softly in her sleep. Your father's boots still crusted with dock mud. The dreams wash away, and reality settles back in like dust. You pick up the kettle, check the water barrel, boil what you can, wipe what you can't. Because in this city, you don't wait for clean. You fight for it. You steal moments of it. You carve it out of filth with rag and prayer, and sometimes, in the early morning, when the fog is still thick and the streets not yet stirred, you catch a glimpse of a puddle that reflects the sky. Not gray, but blue. Just for a second. Just enough to remember that there's beauty buried beneath the grime. Just enough to keep scrubbing. When the last light fades from the sky and the gas lamps flicker to life, London becomes a different creature. The city that groans and clatters by day begins to whisper and stalk by night. The fog thickens, not just from smoke but from silence, stretching like a veil over cobbled alleys and crooked rooftops. You can almost hear the city breathe. Slow, heavy, and dangerous. The day's chaos gives way to something quieter. Something that makes your heart beat harder in your chest. You stay inside as long as you can. Everyone does. The room, though cold and cramped, feels like a fortress once the sun disappears. Your mother lights a candle with a shaking match, her face pale in the glow. The shadows on the wall twitch with every gust of wind. You huddle together, your siblings pressed close, your father silent in the corner with his coat still on. No one wants to sleep first, not yet. The noises start soon after dark. A crash 2 floors above. A man shouting curses, another yelling back. A scream that cuts short too fast to be theatrical. You've learned not to ask questions. Curiosity doesn't serve you here. You pull the blanket tighter and try to drown it out with your breath. Even the rats go quiet sometimes, as if they too are waiting for something to pass. But not everyone can stay in. The night demands movement from those who serve it. Some are forced to work through it. Delivery boys with sacks over their shoulders. Match girls scurrying between taverns. Chimney sweeps heading out before first light. Others, they choose it. Or they have nowhere else to go. You've seen them through the cracks in the shutters. The silhouettes that linger too long at corners. The figures that melt into walls. The shadows with faces. The women of the night begin to appear just after supper. Faces painted. Eyes tired. Steps measured like dancers on cracked glass. You watch one wrap a shawl tighter around her chest as she walks alone down a back street. A man follows her. You don't watch what happens next. You've seen it before. You've seen too many of them stumble back at dawn with torn dresses and bleeding knees, or not at all. Children disappear at night. Sometimes it's the cold. Sometimes it's the hunger that lures them out looking for scraps. And sometimes it's something worse. A boy named Albert from the next building vanished last winter. He was small and quick and had a laugh that echoed through stairwells. One night he went to find bread. The next morning, his mother screamed for hours. No one found him. No one looked too hard. Your father once said the dark is when the city feeds on itself. The law fades with the sun, and what's left is instinct. You survive by knowing the rules, and the first rule is simple. Don't go out unless you must. And if you must, don't stop. Don't speak. Don't look back. Some nights the fog is so thick the gas lamps barely pierce it. You walk past a lamp and feel no warmth, no light. Just a vague hum, like it's trying to exist in a world that's already swallowed it whole. Your footsteps echo weirdly in the mist, bouncing off walls you can't see. You hold your coat closed with one hand and a pocket knife with the other, though you pray you'll never have to use it. Violence here isn't loud. It's sudden. A shove, a blade, a fall into silence. You hear stories of murderers who stalk the alleys. Names whispered in doorways. The Ripper. The Slasher. Ghosts in human form, never caught, never named, but always feared. They don't just kill. They vanish people. Erase them. Turn them into warnings. Even indoors, you're not safe. The buildings are old, brittle, and flammable. A single overturned candle could mean disaster. One winter, a tenement 2 blocks down caught fire. The flames ate through it like paper. Families jumped from windows or burned in their beds. You still smell it in the walls some nights, a phantom smoke that chokes you awake. Sleep comes slowly. Fitful, You dream of falling, of running, of voices calling from beyond the fog. You wake to the creak of the floorboards, the groan of a beam, your father checking the lock for the third time. You drift off again with a blanket over your ears, pretending the world has shrunk to just the space beneath it. Sometimes, though, the night gives you something gentler. The sound of your mother humming to herself while she braids your sister's hair. The quiet click of knitting needles. The way the candlelight flickers over her face, softening her wrinkles. On rare occasions, your father tells a story from before you were born, his voice slow and deep like distant thunder. You listen with your eyes half closed, letting the rhythm carry you toward sleep. But even those moments are fragile. The city is always just outside, pressing against the walls. You know that if you open the door, the cold will pour in. The smells, the fear. So you don't. You stay in your corner and wrap your arms around your knees and wait for morning to come like salvation. Because in London, night doesn't fall. It creeps, it seeps, it claims the edges of your vision until you forget what light looked like. And every morning you survive it. You feel a little stronger, a little more certain that you can last one more day, one more night. And maybe that's enough. Somehow, through the dirt and the dark, through hunger that clings like wet wool and illness that lingers in every breath, life still happens in London. Not the grand, polished life of parlours and parliament, but a quieter kind, worn at the edges and stitched with resilience. You see it not in big gestures, but in fleeting moments, so small you might miss them if you're not paying attention. It starts with a crust of bread, not much, barely more than a sliver. But when your neighbor, old Mrs. Hargreaves, presses it into your palm without a word, you know it means more than just food. She's missing most of her teeth and walks with a limp that gets worse when it rains, yet she still saves you the end of her loaf. You thank her with a nod, and she nods back. And that's it. No speech, no tears, just survival passed hand to hand. Your mother gives away half a pair of socks she's been darning for days. One to your sister, one to the boy next door who lost his to a fire. Your father once spent the last of his week's coin, not on a meal for himself, but on a bit of medicine for the neighbor's baby who wouldn't stop wheezing. He never mentions it, doesn't need to. You learn that charity here is not a performance. It's a habit, a reflex, an instinct born from knowing too well what it means to have nothing. People who have little give to those who have less, and they do it without applause. A man shares his coal because he remembers what it's like to sleep cold. A woman offers her shawl because she knows frostbite by name. No one is trying to be noble. They're just trying to be human. At the pub down the street, the Crooked Lantern, you hear music sometimes. Not the kind played on clean instruments in candlelit halls, but raw, heartfelt tunes pounded out on dented tin and plucked from string with fingers calloused by labor. One of the regulars, a blind man named Cyril, plays a fiddle missing its E string. Doesn't matter. The sound still rises like smoke weaving between the tables, wrapping around tired shoulders. People hum along, tap their feet, forget for a moment that the ceiling leaks and the floor is sticky. Kids laugh in alleys, chasing each other with sticks and old rags tied like tails. They laugh like nothing's wrong, like the city isn't falling apart around them. Your little sister once found a broken doll with only one arm and no eyes. She named it Princess Eleanor and gave it a voice, a backstory, and a wardrobe made from scraps. Watching her cradle that thing like it was real, like she believed it loved her back, you felt something like warmth grow in your chest. Even during funerals, which come too often, there's a strange tenderness. Women bring tea and bread to the grieving. Men stand guard so thieves don't rob the dead. Children gather wildflowers from cracks in the stone and leave them by doorsteps. A friend is a friend, even after they're gone. Sometimes kindness finds you in places you don't expect, like the time you dropped your only piece of bread into the mud, and a stranger handed you half of his biscuit without asking your name. Or when a constable caught you stealing but let you go with a whisper and a look that said, "I've been there too." Or when the butcher's apprentice pretended not to notice you slipping a bone into your pocket, because his sister once did the same. People share stories as currency. Laughter becomes a form of resistance. You've seen a mother tell a ghost story so vivid her children forgot they were sleeping on a damp floor. You've seen old men joke about the rats in the walls like they were paying tenants. Even your brother, after breaking his toe on a coal scuttle, called it his ticket out of work and limped around like a king. There's grace in knowing how to keep going, in putting one foot in front of the other even when the path is soaked in filth, in holding on to scraps of dignity, however tattered. Your mother still brushes her hair every morning, even if she has nowhere to go. Your father still polishes his boots on Sundays, even if they're cracked beyond repair. And you keep your head up when you walk past the baker's shop, even though the smell makes your stomach twist. You realize that survival isn't just about eating or earning. It's about remembering who you are, about protecting the little things that make life more than just not dying. A song, a story, a soft word, a warm hand. And so, as you lie in bed, listening to your sister breathe, watching your parents settle into silence, you feel that fragile thread tying you all together. It's not made of silk or gold. It's made of shared pain, shared joy, shared memory. It's made of the decision, repeated daily, to keep going, to keep caring, to keep being kind even when the world isn't. Because in a place where everything is trying to break you, kindness is a rebellion. Resilience is a protest. And grace, however humble, however fleeting, is the most human thing of all. You don't realize it until much later, but surviving London wasn't just about holding on. It was about transforming. Every scar, every hunger pang, every night spent listening for footsteps in the fog became part of you. Not as wounds, but as layers. The city took things from you. Sleep. Safety. Sometimes hope. But it gave you something too. A kind of strength so embedded it became invisible, like breath or bone. There comes a day when the noise of the city feels less like a threat and more like a rhythm. You wake before the roosters, not because you must, but because it's what you know. You lace your boots with calloused fingers, tug your coat into place, and walk the same cracked streets with eyes that see more than they used to. You know which doors creak before they open, which pump runs cleanest at dawn, and which alley smells worst after rain. You've memorized the city's bones because you grew among them. The faces have changed. Children you once played with now carry sacks on their backs, and their parents' weight on their shoulders. Some disappeared entirely, their names whispered only in the pauses between sentences. Others left, escaped, maybe, found work on ships or trains. And then there are the ones still here, same as you. Their gazes older than their years, their mouths half-formed with lessons they never asked to learn. You catch your reflection in a shop window one evening, smudged with soot and rain, and barely recognize the figure staring back. Taller, sharper, tired in the eyes, but still standing. You look at your hands and think of everything they've touched. Ash, bread, blood, hope. The weight of your sister's fevered forehead. The softness of your mother's fingers as she braided your hair by candlelight. The broken wood of a crate you once called a bed. You think of all the times you reached out and were met with kindness instead of cruelty. Not often, but often enough to keep believing in it. Somewhere people talk about progress, reform, the empire. They say this country is moving forward. You're not sure what that means when the pump still runs brown half the week, and your boots leak in the same place they did last winter. But you've also seen men with clipboards sketching new sewer lines, and a woman from the city council handing out blankets during a cold snap. So maybe something's changing. But the legacy of survival isn't written in those moments. It's written in what you carry with you, the way you instinctively save scraps, how you can feel a fever with the back of your hand, how you walk with your back to the wall, just in case. You inherited resilience like a birthright, passed down not in stories, but in instinct. And when people ask how you made it, you won't know how to answer. You'll just shrug, smile, and say, "We didn't have a choice." You think about your parents more now. About the nights they sat in silence, counting coins, whispering plans. You remember how they always left you the biggest slice of bread, even when they hadn't eaten all day. You didn't understand the sacrifice then. Now it breaks your heart, but it also makes you proud. Because they gave you more than food. They gave you a map, a way through darkness, a reason to believe there was something on the other side of the grime and the noise. And your sister, who once lay still and pale in a bed that smelled of mildew and desperation, she lived. You don't know how. The fever broke like a wave. One day, she coughed less. The next, she sat up. Her voice came back in whispers, then in songs. Today, she runs, she plays, she laughs. Her laugh is sharp and bright and fills rooms the way gas lamps never could. You sometimes think she brought color back into your world just by surviving. You no longer think of London as just a place. It's a character, a beast, a mother and a monster, both at once. It raised you with hard hands and cruel lessons, but it also taught you to be sharp, to be soft when it mattered, to find warmth in unexpected places. You've hated it and loved it in equal measure. Maybe that's the only honest relationship anyone can have with a city like this. There's a quiet power in being forgotten by history. No one will write your name in books. No statues will bear your likeness. But who helped build, brick by brick, breath by breath, will stand. The people who come after you will walk on roads paved with the stories you lived but never told. And maybe that's enough. Maybe survival is its own kind of legacy. Years from now, someone might ask about the old days. The time when the fog was thick, the nights were colder, and the days longer than they had any right to be. They'll ask if it was really that bad. If people really lived like that, and you'll nod. You'll tell them stories not to frighten them, but to remind them of how far they've come, of how deep strength can run, of what kindness looks like in a world that doesn't make room for it. You'll tell them about the nights you thought would never end, and the mornings that surprised you, about the warmth of shared tea, about the man who gave you an apple when you were starving, about the sound of laughter echoing down an alley that reeked of piss and hope, about how you once dreamed of a bath and found, instead, a family. And as your voice fades and your memory curls at the edges, you'll leave behind something bigger than yourself. Not a monument, not a name, but a truth. That even in the darkest corners of the dirtiest city, human beings can shine. That dignity isn't found in clean clothes or full tables, but in how you treat the person beside you. That the real empire was never built by kings or generals, but by those who endured quietly, who gave what little they had, and who chose to keep going. This was Victorian London, and this was you, unseen, uncelebrated, unforgettable. The end and the beginning